This moment did not arrive with spectacle. There was no speech designed to be replayed, no red line drawn on a map, no declaration meant to anchor public memory. Instead, it surfaced through subtler shifts that only become visible once they accumulate. A change in language inside intelligence reporting, a compression of timelines inside military planning, a tone that quietly moved from caution to contingency. When the New York Times reported that U.S. intelligence agencies now assess Iran's leadership to be facing its most vulnerable position since the 1979 revolution, that sentence carried more weight than its placement suggested. In Washington, assessments like that are not descriptive, they are directional. During the Cold War, moments of perceived vulnerability were often the most dangerous. Not because weakness invites collapse, but because it invites testing. In 1956, after the death of Stalin, US and Allied analysts believed the Soviet system was internally fragile. That belief contributed to risk-taking that nearly spiraled out of control during the Suez Crisis and later in Berlin. Vulnerability assessments rarely stay academic. They reshape how restraint is justified. Vulnerability, in intelligence terms, does not mean helplessness. It means exposure. It means a leadership facing legitimacy crises, economic strain, internal dissent, and narrowing room to maneuver. These are the moments when outside powers begin asking questions they normally suppress. How far can pressure go? How much retaliation can be absorbed? What costs are acceptable if the adversary appears constrained? That assessment did not remain theoretical. Almost immediately, indicators appeared that the U.S. military posture toward Iran was shifting from routine deterrence to active contingency positioning. Defense officials began describing readiness timelines in days rather than weeks. The carrier strike group centered on the USS Abraham Lincoln was cited as capable of initiating combat operations within 1 to 2 days if authorization were granted. That timeline is not conjecture. It aligns with U.S. Navy doctrine and has been publicly acknowledged by the Pentagon during previous Middle East escalations. During the Cold War, similar signals were sent through bomber dispersals, submarine patrols, and forward deployments. In October 1962, before the public understood what was happening in Cuba, U.S. Strategic Air Command quietly elevated readiness levels. The point was not to start a war, it was to ensure that if decisions were made, execution would not lag behind intent. But that very logic created its own danger. Once forces are positioned, the psychological barrier to use drops. Carrier groups today play a role analogous to bomber wings then. They are not deployed to provoke, they are deployed to remove friction. But friction, inconvenient as it is, also buys time. When friction disappears, what remains is judgment under pressure. Alongside naval posture, reporting emerged that U.S. strategic bombers based in the continental United States were operating at elevated readiness. Reuters has documented similar bomber posture changes during earlier confrontations with Iran, including the periods surrounding the killing of Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Strategic bombers are not symbolic assets. They exist to bypass regional constraints entirely. During the Cold War, bomber readiness was one of the clearest escalation signals because it shortened the distance between decision and destruction. None of this confirms that a strike has been ordered. That distinction remains critical. But it also should not obscure what has changed. The United States has deliberately positioned itself so that escalation would not require preparation, only authorization. Another layer entered the picture through regional reporting. Middle East Eye, citing a Gulf country official familiar with internal discussions, reported that U.S. officials have considered precision strikes against Iranian commanders accused of directing violent crackdowns on protesters. This reporting has not been publicly confirmed and must be treated with caution, but historically, it fits a pattern. During the Cold War, targeted options against leadership and command structures were routinely developed even when publicly denied. Declassified US documents now show that plans existed to target Soviet command nodes during crises in Berlin and Cuba, despite official rhetoric emphasizing restraint. What distinguishes this moment is the internal atmosphere inside Washington. According to the New York Times, discussions within the administration have been described as chaotic, with deep divisions over escalation risks and the scale of Iranian retaliation. Internal division during crises is not new. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, U.S. leadership was deeply split, with some advocating immediate strikes and others urging restraint. What mattered was not unanimity, but whether restraint could hold under pressure. Iran's capacity to retaliate is not speculative. U.S. intelligence assessments presented to Congress over multiple years have emphasized Iran's ability to strike indirectly through proxy networks across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. The Pentagon has also publicly acknowledged Iran's ability to disrupt shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point vital to global energy markets. During the Cold War, proxy conflicts were the norm, not the exception. Direct confrontation was avoided precisely because escalation pathways were too dangerous to control. The lesson from that era is not that proxies reduce risk, it is that they obscure it. At this point, clarity demands restraint in interpretation. There is no public authorization for strikes on Iran. There is no confirmation that a final decision has been made. There is, however, clear evidence of heightened readiness and contingency planning. That places us in a familiar historical space, the space between preparation and action. What we are witnessing is not an imminent declaration of war, but a deliberate compression of time and options. This is a pressure phase designed to exploit perceived vulnerability without committing to irreversible action. During the Cold War, this strategy was known under different names. Brinkmanship, coercive signaling, controlled escalation. It promised leverage without catastrophe. It also produced some of the most dangerous moments in human history. Brinkmanship relies on the assumption that all actors understand where the edge is. History suggests otherwise. There is also a broader ideological environment shaping this moment. Russian state-aligned commentators and ideological figures have increasingly framed global politics as an existential struggle with the West, portraying compromise as decay and restraint as surrender. During the Cold War, similar rhetoric emerged on both sides, framing conflict as inevitable and peace as temporary illusion. That rhetoric did not cause war directly, but it narrowed the space for de-escalation by redefining caution as weakness. This matters because crises do not occur in isolation. Signals sent toward Iran are read in Moscow, Beijing, and other capitals. Each actor recalculates not only based on what the United States might do next, but on what it believes escalation will be tolerated. During the Cold War, local crises often became global tests. Berlin was not just about Germany. Cuba was not just about missiles. They were about credibility. Iran occupies a similar position today, not as a superpower, but as a test of limits. There is also the role of public expectation. During the Cold War, information moved slowly. Today, social media amplification, anonymous leaks, and sensational framing create the impression that decisions are already made. That perception hardens domestic opinion and constrains diplomatic maneuvering. Leaders are not insulated from public narrative. They are embedded within it. This is how pressure becomes momentum. One of the most dangerous assumptions in international politics is that weakness invites compliance. History suggests it often invites resistance. States under pressure tend to act unpredictably, not submissively. During the Cold War, moments when one side believed the other was cornered produced some of the sharpest escalations, not resolutions. Iran has survived decades of sanctions, isolation, and military pressure by developing resilience and indirect response mechanisms. Whether that resilience is now overstated is an open question, but intelligence assessments are not certainties, they are probabilistic judgments. The Cold War is filled with examples where such judgments were wrong, sometimes catastrophically. So where does this leave us? It leaves us in a narrowing corridor where preparation, perception, and pressure converge. The United States is positioned to act rapidly but has not committed to act. Iran is under stress but retains significant retaliatory capacity. Regional actors are watching closely, calculating how escalation would ripple across their own security environments. And the global system, already strained by overlapping crises, has less tolerance for miscalculation than at any point since the end of the Cold War. This is not the opening chapter of a war, but it is the kind of moment that determines whether wars become possible. During the Cold War, historians later identified these moments as points where restraint held or failed. They were rarely obvious at the time. History does not announce the point of no return, it only reveals it in hindsight. If this moment passes without escalation, it will be remembered as restraint under pressure. If it does not, it will be remembered as the phase where signals were sent, received, and misunderstood. That is the reality behind the posture and the rhetoric. Not inevitability, not hysteria, but the dangerous compression of time, intent, and consequence that defined the most perilous years of the Cold War, now echoing again under different names.